So while everyone's coming in, you might have caught in the description that this one has a little bit of writing. It's a bit of an interactive one. So if you have the ability to grabbing just scrap paper, pen, pencil, or if you can't, that's okay as well. Listening along is just as fine, but you may want to have a little bit of a writing just to kind of go along the case studies with us.
You're going to get the presentation at the end, so you don't have to write what is on the presentation. We're probably going to send it to you on Monday with a link to your certificate, so you can download your e-certificate, which can always be used as your CPD proof that you're working on yourself.
So yes, tonight is about supporting well-being via a low demand strategy. It's one of my favorite things to talk about. So I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for everyone to drop in, especially a Friday evening. And if you're listening to this in the future, thank you so much. I really enjoy being here with all of you. I always learn a lot, particularly when you go into the chats. So that's really, really fun for me. And let's go to next slide. If we haven't met before, I'm Laura. I'm a nurse and a public health nurse, and I work independent. Came to the work because I'm neurodivergent, autistic, ADHD, and I basically really wanted to figure out myself, my kids, and I do a lot of work around everything mental health. I do a lot of what I call the self-care needs, food, eating, toileting, all the hygiene stuff, and sleep. So that's me. You're welcome to come find me. And I love these chats with childcare providers. So I would say, I think because you chose to go into the profession of caring, that you are very caring and that you have such enthusiasm about the people you care for. So I always find the interactions to be really helpful for me to learn as well. So thank you again for coming. So well-being or mental health, emotional regulation, co-regulation, all those buzzwords, I would say those are probably some of the most common reasons why someone reaches out for support or attends one of my workshops. Those tend to be the big buzzwords. As we're going on, if you want to write in the chat, if this also for you as a care provider are like, concerns of yours about the kids you care for, are these your priorities as well? I'd like to think so. It's why we're all here. But I do think this is quite the base of the work I do. Renata and I were saying before this started was the mental health of our kids and other people we care for is really the most important thing. They're really quite the priorities, and everything else comes from that. So again, great that we're here chatting. So while we've talked before about some strategies to help someone when they're in a moment of distress, when they're already overwhelmed, and those are really important. Well, when we're talking about emotional regulation and we're talking about someone's well-being, overall well-being, it's really important to figure out more proactive solutions. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. So we're hoping to tease out some ways to help someone prevent to get overwhelmed and prevent getting to that distress. So that's what the low demand strategy is all about. I'll go over to my next slide. So this, if you are in any neurodivergent led spaces, if you follow any of us, you will see the word demand and low demand really quite often. It's the basis of a lot of the work that we do. So it's really when people are struggling again with those self-care areas, this is kind of our bread and butter. And the reasons for it is the goals. Let me just move the chat box again so I can see what I have on here. The goals is because it has us be in this position of doing ongoing priorities, whether that's in the moment and just making priorities for that and to help the kid in that moment, or really thinking long-term and looking at like, what's going on for this kid, this young person over this week? What's going on over the month? And it's really an ongoing, because we might have made a decision about what our priority is like for today, like we think we're going to do these things today. But as that person starts to go through the day, and if we show any distress, we reprioritize. It also leads to a lot of like chill out, relax, self-led time. So that's represented by the kid reading their book. We know that we all need rest. We talk about it a lot in the neurodivergent spaces. Like we just really need rest and to be given time that's unstructured. And another reason I love this little Lego person is it naturally helps us build in more time for our deep interests, the things that we really care about, that the thing that really makes you tick, what does this young person really love? And we're going to be talking about like again, those priorities and making sure that's part of it. And I put this this Lego thing in there because it's hard to see, but they're actually holding in the right hand. It's actually a Pokemon. So I thought, well, that's quite representative of a lot of our interests. So quite on the nose with that one. All right. So that's the priorities of low demand strategies. But I think in order to understand what that means in practice, we need to figure out like, what are demands? And this is where I had so many light bulb moments because I would say, gosh, I don't think I'm being very demanding with my children. I think I'm doing my best, but yet we're just still not there. So I put together the next page to really help us see what are demands. I tend to think of them in these 4 categories. Particularly for tonight, I thought this would be a good way to go because yes, there's lots of subdivisions if we really want to get in there. In a 1-hour webinar, let's go with our 4 top like main categories, umbrellas, and go from there. So when we're looking at what are demands, so demands are then pressures put onto us. So the easiest ones to recognize would be that number 1, those are the commands. So that's something really directly telling someone something to do. So that could be in the school setting with do numbers 1 through 15 in your math book or maths, since we're in UK, maths book. Or in the home setting, be go get your PJs. You know, it's near bedtime. Go get your PJs. Go grab your PJs. Number 2, closely related, are the recommendations and suggestions. We do this a lot with each other as adults. I'm really trying to catch myself with it. We do this a lot with, oh my gosh, I read this book. Here, take it. You're going to love it. And it actually puts that bit of pressure on someone like, well, now I got to read it. I don't think I have time. And I have to feel the same way as you. For kiddos, it might be in a school setting. It might be on the playground of, oh, you should really include those 2 other kids over there. I think they might want to join. I think it'd be good to include them. And then we have number 3. This one's a huge one for us, neurodivergent autistic people, are the social expectations. There are so many written and unwritten social expectation and rules. And whenever we leave our houses, we kind of take all those on. So these are lots of pressures. One that I discuss kind of with friends because I find it, we've had to really work with my kids' school to help them not have to feel so much pressure as they walk into the school right away. There's a lot of social expectation of how you enter the school, that you need to look at the headmaster in the eye, shake his hand, and do the whole, hello, how are you? I'm fine. How are you? You know, and the whole kind of like not real, kind of really surface interaction, which some people find that to be really good manners. For autistic people, we find that a lot of social pressure. And then number 4 is where I spend most of my work and was based around internal demands. So this was something that, again, was like, how did I go through all this healthcare training? And this was like never a thing. So internal demands are the ones coming from ourselves. These are then ongoing, constant, pretty much as soon as you sort yourself, you've got another one coming, or the same one, but just maybe like an hour later. So this is you feel that you have a full bladder, which means it demands you to need to go to the toilet. So, you know, the kiddos, when you're like, I can see you wiggling, I can see you doing your dance. And they don't want to go to the bathroom. They're like, no, it's the wrong time. It's never the right time. That this also has to do with body temperature. If you feel that you're really hot and sweaty, and it's like, that's now a demand to have to process that information and recognize, I need to take my jumper off, right? I feel that my tummy is rumbling. I have an empty feeling. So it's a demand that I need to eat something. So these are the main 4 categories that I find really helpful with recognizing in the moment what's going on for this person. Before we go to our first case study, is there any kind of question there if you wanted to go in the chat and throw something in? Because I know I said kind of a lot. Well, while we wait for that or not. So then people tend to ask me all the time, like, why do you talk about demands all the time? Well, we talk about demands a lot because actually all of these add pressure. And I think we can all agree that when we have a lot of pressures on, when there's literally too much on our plate, we get overwhelmed. So it's why we're going to look at them and really tease them out to recognize that even in pretty simple scenarios, there's quite a lot of demands going on this little person or on ourselves as well. It's also really good to chat about because we often worry about meeting these expectations. So I don't know if you work with any younger people or if it's true for yourself that there's times where you know that the other person would actually enjoy doing something, but they feel so much pressure to meet the expectation and like stops them from starting. And it's just like there's just too much going on. There's too much expectation. There's too much pressure. And so again, we worry about wanting to meet those expectations, going into that Dr. Green, Ross Green of like, oh, someone wrote like, sounds like motherhood. Yes, it's just too much sometimes, isn't it? It's just too much going on. Sorry, then that threw me off because it was having me think of my day. But yeah, we really worry about disappointing other people. And so if we want to be stepping back and especially looking at younger people, they really want us to be proud of them. And if there's too many pressures on, you can see some kids will just completely disengage because they're not sure how to even begin to meet these things. Another reason, there's so many layers to this, is with demands, there is a right and wrong way to respond to them, which in itself is a big pressure. So with the example of commands, I said that was the do numbers 1 through 15 in your math book. So the correct thing to do would be follow that right away, do numbers 1 through 15. And there's an incorrect way of not doing it, which can get you in trouble at school. In the recommendations and suggestions of, it would be a good idea to include these other kids in your game. Well, if you don't do that, you're probably going to disappoint that adult. The example I gave, like my kids going to school, the social expectations, if they don't do that, when we have had to talk to them, that they're considered rude by not meeting those expectations. And then the internal ones, if we don't take care of ourselves, I think we can all agree we don't feel well. I mean, even the little things of like, oh my gosh, I didn't eat for hours and now I've got this headache, right? We just don't feel well. So all of these together then are quite a lot happening. And it's a lot to be processing all at the same time because it's all giving us information, whether from somebody else or from ourselves as well. Because when we receive that internal information, it prompts us to do something. So there's extra steps. So lots of information coming, lots of processing. But what do we also know about young people? That whole area of processing information in the frontal lobes isn't done developing, right? It's the later in teenagehood to early 20s that we think of. So if they're trying to process all these different bits of information, it's literally too much for their executive function, their frontal lobe to process. So the reason why we get into the low demand lifestyles is that idea of let's figure out what are going to be the most important demands in this moment, in this day, in this week, month, because we understand that everything is limited. So we don't want to put too much pressure at one time. We don't want too much pressure in one day because we want them to meet the priorities of that day. And that's going to be something we'll talk about in the case studies because that's obviously quite variable. I hope you can all agree ahead of time that the internal ones are very important. We need to take care of ourselves. All right. I think I'll go to the next one. But if you have a question to jump in, please do. Oh, I talked about it ahead of time, but there it is in writing. I forgot. I got excited and talked ahead. The one point I didn't mention though quite yet is another big reason why we discuss demands and really being able to see all of the different ones. This is particularly important for the younger people where caregivers, parents say things like, we're walking on eggshells. They seem to get upset very quickly and very often. And we can often really step back, create this picture of all these demands coming in and realizing, so if this person's getting overwhelmed from this, that means that internal alarm system is activated and it's activating all the time. So for the kiddos that were that walking on eggshells or they're considered like there's no emotional regulation going on, it's usually meaning this alarm system is telling them it's too much, it's too much, it's too much. And I think we mentioned the other things. Yeah, lots of mental and physical energy. And we really worry about disappointing people. I think that's true for everybody. I think we all worry about that. So let's move to the next one. So this is where you could have some paper if that's available to you, or you could just end up in the chat. That's fine as well. I just wanted to show like a really simple scenario and have us go through then the 4 main categories and see like what's actually all here going on for this little kiddo. So I could read it out, but yeah, it's 11:15 at Cool Kids Primary, and 7-year-old Taylor is playing with some blocks during some free time. Their teacher claps their hands and announces that it's time for that next lesson, and it'll be in groups at the 4 tables. The teacher asks the kids if they can find a spot at the closest table, and it would be great if they could do this quietly and quickly. So what I thought we would do, since we're online, we could go through this together. So you could go into the chat and we could go through commands first. So, and what you might find right away is the demands can kind of be slotted into multiple ones at times. So if you're having a hard time trying to place where it should go, that might just be because some demands are a few of them at the same time. So if we're looking at commands were the ones that were a bit more direct in telling someone something to do. So if you wanted to jump into the chat, we could just start typing them out. Or if you want to take a minute to yourself, you could always do like a picture, kind of like on the image on the screen, like a little stick figure, and just start writing things around the person to get a bit of a visual for yourself. And let's see, I'll go over to my notes that should have it. All right, so does anyone have any ideas about commands? Okay, you caught that. Yeah, having some sort of warning is very helpful. It's a much softer way to help with transition times, isn't it? So much more helpful. So what I hear there is like, there is going to be a priority of the lesson, maybe in this scenario, that is going to be a priority, that we're going to want to get to this lesson. So what could be a nicer way of going around this command? Definitely throwing in some warnings and for transition time. Because the command of transitioning thought is actually really hard, especially for younger people and for neurodivergent people. Any other commands that you might be seeing in there? Because there's some that are kind of hidden. So this kiddo's playing with blocks. So actually, if they're being told time for that lesson, what does that really mean for what they're doing? It's going to be a command to stop playing. It might be a command or a social expectation that they need to tidy up the blocks. Is there anything else anyone wants to throw in there? It's hard to see if someone's typing. It can't. There's like the dots, but so I always feel bad if I talk over someone. The dots are in there because it takes a little while to get your thoughts in, which is understandable. Or a lot of you might be listening with your earbuds and being like, I have no way of typing. So that's okay. So some of them I wrote down, you got it. That one of like at the transition itself is a command, having to transition thought is a command, having to transition from maybe tidying up these blocks and putting them away. Moving across the room is also a command. Ooh, it has to be quick and quiet. Yes, good catch. I was thinking that could be a good one in that like recommendation suggestions. But it also, because of how it's worded, is that command one too. So really good on that one. We could jump over to then to social expectations during this time. If anyone wants to throw any of the social expectations. So it's a kid in a classroom with a bunch of other kids, we're assuming, since I talked about some of these other people. Into the group, because it's like an expectation that you didn't get to work by yourself, and there can be some anxiety with that, having to do group work for sure. And then even that's in itself, there's a lot of social expectation in that, isn't there? You're going to need to, you got to do some turn taking. You probably need to be quiet. You probably need to be trying to keep your body to yourself. Like you've learned all those things maybe since reception. Ooh, so what I like you jumping in with And it always gets ahead, which makes me really happy. It's kind of part of the next case study, but it makes me so happy because what you're doing is the next we're going to say, so now that we looked at all these different demands, let's think about how we can be adding in supports, accommodations, and making them more gentle. And you did it already. So fabulous. Thank you so much. You're absolutely right. Because if we decided this transition is really important, what could we add to it to make it more fun, more gentle? Right? Especially when we have this, maybe it's a group of kids, we have no idea what's going on with them. It's a lot of stuff. Oh, that's right. With helping each other. Yes. Having to do like some back and forth with these kids, depending on how that morning's gone for this kid, they might be like, oh my gosh, the last thing I want to do is be next to this kid who kicked me earlier. You know what I mean? It's quite a lot of the social expectations in groups are massive. I know I leave sometimes like, I'm so tired. What else did I put on here? Oh, they might need to be answering questions as they go along. That can feel like a lot of pressure to answer questions in front of a group. Let's see. Or suggest them to organize the environment, to organize the blocks while they enjoy the process. Oh yeah, so like it could be an expectation priority to, if I'm reading right, to instead of maybe putting all their blocks away, maybe there's a different way to make that command, again, more gentle for this kid, maybe kind of organizing in a nice way. So that way they could feel like they've done a tidy, but in a way that they got to collaborate with what that looks like. Anyone want to throw in what internal stuff might be going on with this kid? Which part of the point is that it's difficult to know because it's someone else's body, but there's kind of the tip that it's 11:15, and it's a young kid, been busy all day. So what might be going on with this kid and inside their body? Oh, and I didn't mention, I think because I talked over it, also internal demands include our emotions because we got to manage those, right? So internal also is if I feel really sad, like what do I do with that? How do I express it? Hungry, yes, thank you. And tired even, yes. Like these younger kids are so busy so fast, they don't pace themselves really well, do they? They're just like whoosh and they go. Yeah, I mean, we're getting close to lunchtime. Maybe we don't know if the school does a snack or not, or big snack, but they're getting close. So they might be already having their body already telling them that, hey, you might need to be taking a break soon. And I know your teacher said to do this, but actually I want you to do this over here. We also don't know, has this kid gone to the toilet at all? He's been there. I know my kiddos don't take themselves in the middle of things. So they're always getting those signals of like, go to the toilet, go to the toilet, go to the toilet, on top of, oh, come do this group work. And yes, the overwhelm, even having to do all these tasks in the morning. So there's a lot of emotion that goes into it because this kid just went from free time to now structured time, which is out of their hands. And they might be feeling a bit disappointed about that, actually. So now they have that kind of on them about that. Let's see, did I put anything else? Oh, one thing to mention, it's kind of been a social expectation. It's kind of an internal one of those. But I find there tends to be a lot of pressure when we end up talking in like workshops and talking to the kids themselves. There's a lot of pressure on motivation of that a staff member or a parent might be upset that they came to the task without being just like, it's enough for some person to transition to doing it. But it is quite a big expectation to expect all the young kids to be coming like, oh, great, right? With a smile on their face. They might just be like, this is what I got to give to this moment. And I think we need to be okay with kids just like, I'm here. Because that's how we feel at times too, isn't it? All right. So we already kind of started on the next bit, which is amazing. I think childcare providers, you just like naturally do it. It was that idea of, right, well, low demand strategy. So we listed a bunch of demands. What does that mean then to put in this low demand strategy? We start to look at what are the priorities? So I think most of us decided that the lesson is still a priority. So what could we add in? What could we remove to help reduce the other demands that are on this kid at this time? So that way they're more likely to accept the demand of going over to the lesson and more likely to have enough energy to actually process what's going on with the learning. So with all this stuff that we talked about, And there's no wrong answers, because actually the priorities in every moment, the priorities for every kid are all very personal. So what you kind of come up with a scenario, and we don't have all the information, very likely is still really good. It's all great ideas. But does anyone want to throw in? We had the idea about like music during the transition, making it, a nicer way to move across. One idea just to get like minds going. Yeah. A timer to make it fun. Yeah. Adding in so that element. So that way those, the emotions, that internal pressures can maybe go into that realm of feeling a bit more excited, a bit calmer. And that was going to go into a suggestion around like, how else could we recommend or suggest this transition go? Maybe to take care of internal, maybe it's we're going to be moving to this activity. Now's a great time to go get your water bottle. Now's a great time to go get an extra, cracker biscuit on your way to your table. Take care of those internal demands at the same time. So just being a bit creative with it, really. Anybody else have an idea? I think we're picking up on a lot of like that transition time, and like a really quick transition is a really difficult, because it creates a lot of demands very, very quickly. And that's actually one of the big things we talk about with autistics is very quick demands like that. And a bunch of them really are dysregulating for us. I also think that's true of kind of everybody. Particularly, we really struggle with that. So someone said, in one of the kindergarten groups where I worked, we had a tidy up traffic light, and you could set different timers with that too. Yeah, it's just kind of being creative and fun with it, isn't it? And just kind of recognizing that the kiddos, that expectation of stopping something and moving to the next one really quickly isn't maybe that isn't a priority. If the priority is going to be get to the lesson, maybe we drop the demands of how quickly they get there. That makes sense. And then we add in a bit more fun. Yeah. Anything else to add to this one before we go to the next? I think we hit on a lot of the major stuff I did. Well, I'll go to the next, but if you have an idea, it might work for the next one anyway. So apology. Oh, giving some form of recognition to the children. I love that. That is a lovely idea. Recognizing that they went from like free time to a structured activity. I think that's fantastic. That is I'm going to write that down. Because isn't it? It's often we just want to be acknowledged for the emotions we have and acknowledged for what we're going through. Yeah, I love that. That's a really good one, Angela. Thank you so much. So this one's a little bit longer. Sorry for the text, but I was trying to make it sound a bit more like realistic of what it happens on like weekends. Because Renata and I were saying again of this before the chat went on, was that so many kids have so many activities now, and it's becoming much more relevant to have discussions with their families about, let's take a really honest look at what's going on each day, again, the week, the month, and really try to look at what demands to take out of here to support this person. All right, so it's Sunday morning, and you've just arrived at the awesome family's home to care for their children today. There's Riley, who's 12 years old, just rolling out of bed as the alarm buzzer goes off. They need to find their football kit, get themselves ready for their first match, and both of you out the door in 15 minutes. They have a tournament all day long. On their desk are undone homework sheets to be brought in on Monday morning. Where are those boots? Oh, and don't forget the water bottle. Like every Sunday, Riley's family is planning to have a Sunday roast at his nan's house in the evening. You'll be dropping Riley off at his nan's straight after their last match. You know Riley only likes the Yorkshire puddings and tends to stuff his pockets with some snacks. While you are coming into the home, Riley's mom checks in on Riley. Later, it would be great if you could have even just a few bites of the beef. It would make your nan so happy. And your younger cousins will be there, and you know how much they look up to you. They would really love if you would play with them a bit.
Gosh, that makes me tired.
I know. But in reality, like,
adult. It's
my neighbors, it's all the kids like I support. And I think this is a lot. Like, again, like you said, like I'm tired just hearing about it. So in a way, like, as we're kind of making a joke about it, but in reality, like this is really what's going on with so many kids. And the uptick in, like when I was at the Childcare Expo, the uptick of what people were seeing with emotional dysregulation and outbursts and aggression and stuff like that. I really do believe there is a huge thread in how much we are over structuring the kids and how much we had such a big jump back into just everything. We'll get into some of that after this case study of like the bigger implications. So let's jump in. There's a lot of social expectations. I mean, upon each other. So where do we want to start? So what I did, and we kind of did before, we don't have to structure it like this, is this image over here was if we wanted to go through, again, those 4 different categories of demands. So all those pressures going into this image of like their head. And then coming up on the other side is what kind of supports, what kind of accommodations, or what are we going to say, this is not a priority. We are deciding this is a demand we don't need today. We could kind of do this together since it's working in the chat instead of separately. And I like to give the tip of, while you're going through this, some people might decide a different priorities because priorities change. This Sunday might be the exact same for many Sundays, to where we might make different priorities on those different days. And then what was I going to say with that? I don't remember. Lost my train of thought. But I know we could just get started. So yes, lots of social expectations, internal expectations. So mom talking about what this person's going to eat, spending time with younger cousins. Yeah, it goes into like kind of the recommendations and suggestions, also internal, because if this is something they don't like, they immediately are going to get a bit like, oh, like disgust feelings or just like annoyed feelings that now they need to deal with, but they're also trying to get out the door. And that's in social expectations. So you've hit the nail on the head where some of these demands cover quite a lot. Doing his best at football matches. That's a great one. That's a lot of internal pressure, I would say, and social pressure, depending on how they interact with their coach around that. Maybe they get pressure from them, under pressure by the family, under pressure by social expectation. You know, has anyone asked them what they want to do? I love that, because that really is the nail on the head, like really is what is the priority for this kid today? And if they love football, maybe it is the tournament. So maybe we, so one thing to bring up, I kind of alluded to it. That's what my thought was. So when we making priorities, you naturally are going to be dropping some things. So we could make decisions on this Sunday sounds like a lot for this young person. Maybe we say no to some things this Sunday. And so that's that idea of maybe the Sunday family dinner is too much today. And maybe next week we have to have that decision making of maybe it's not football today, maybe it's the family dinner. But again, like priorities are really personal. And when I have these conversations with families, it's easier said than done, because your kid is probably going to want to still do everything as they liked it. And you're going to have a whole different set of the things that you would really like them to be at. But if somebody is not taking care of themselves and like hygiene's dropped, sleep's gone, they're really anxious all the time, we really do need to sit with, we do have to let some things go. And just for now, that's the phrase we use a lot, is it's just for now. So maybe we prioritize the family time or the football time. It's just for now to help make sure that this young person gets some extra rest. If we go into, even the social expectations of being at football practice, right? There's going to be turn taking. They're going to be expected to greet the other players. Maybe they don't like some of these kids and they now have to like be at practice with them. Like that's a lot to be taking in. How they talk to their coach. There's a lot of social expectations on sports teams, right? Where coaches think they're much more in charge. It's much more adult led. What else haven't we covered? Does anybody want to throw any in? We talked a bit about the internal with discussing some of the emotion and being asked to eat some foods that they don't really want. I love your point. That is probably one of the biggest points I'm making all this is great to prioritize the activities and asking the child how they feel about it all, giving space to choose. I really like that. I think that's a really good life skill. Going back to this idea that I think we worry about not meeting expectations. The pleasing everybody is the very next comment. That is massive demand and pressure. By letting them from a young age getting to pick one, even pick things, even though it might be not your favorite one that they picked, but realizing actually it is about me. And it's okay that this isn't exactly what this person wants for me and exactly what this person wants for me, because that's how we get into in our adult life. We're trying to handle everything as maybe a parent, an employee, and everything. And we don't know how to say no. This is really like really good practice for younger people to go, actually, I'm learning about that there's too many demands on me on the day to day, and I'm going to say no to some things. And it gets them using that language too, of like, I feel just like overwhelmed. I feel like there's too too many things happening. We didn't quite get into it. This is a 12-year-old. This is a preteen, and remembering like their internal emotions are particularly everywhere. That's a lot in itself. And this kiddo got up, ran off. We don't know if they ate. We don't know if they had any fluids in the morning. They're going to be gone like all day. So that means it's someone that probably doesn't have access to the self-care things that they need throughout the majority of the day. So that gets back into maybe the evening time needs to be rest. So maybe that's a discussion with family of maybe once in a while we switch when the Sunday dinner is. Maybe it needs to come earlier so he can participate and then be able to have some rest after. You might be hearing kind of the name of the game is flexibility, and asking people around you to acknowledge your needs as well as you trying to acknowledge their needs and working together to figure out what works together. Again, because one of the whole things around the low demand lifestyle stuff is actually just saying, unfortunately, we're just not going to be able to participate every single time. Like we could maybe last week, but not this week. And that's okay. Again, just because we said yes to something doesn't mean I'm always able to meet that expectation. Does anyone want to throw in anything else?
I think that playing with the younger cousin expectation is quite huge, isn't it? After a whole day you on a pitch with in a loud noise environment, and then you go and play with the little cousins. As much as I love children, but after all that, I think that
It
would
just
be
sounds
too
like a
much.
lot from the one day.
Yeah.
Doesn't
And kind of expecting it, rather than just, if you would like to, you can play. That could be the suggestion.
Yeah.
But if you want to take a space, you can go to granny's bedroom or something and read or have a snooze.
Yes. And so that's
Thing.
a great way too of
Yeah.
if it's to spend some time with the family, it doesn't mean you always have to be in that room engaging the entire time. Maybe it's coming in for a bit, but getting to go watch something on a screen for a little while and having a break. And I'm sure the mom is really saying that from like a good place of, oh, the kiddos that were asking me about Riley. And, again, like they probably feel pressure too of trying to get them all engaging. And I think that social expectation of your cousins, so you're going to love each other and play together. So everyone's going in with good intentions. We just sometimes don't realize the things that we're saying to somebody else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And very often children don't have that language, don't they, to say, oh, I need my space. They're just going to be grumpy and maybe rude. And then we even put more pressure on them that they don't behave as we want them to behave, isn't it? That's what it's all about.
That is so true. That is so true. We often, like the kids having the hardest time. We talk about this a lot with like what therapy or what support is appropriate at the time, because it's sometimes like that in itself is a demand. So really deciding like what is going to be worth this person's time. It has to be more valuable than just like a nap. It can be a lot for this young person. Another person put in, if football kit would be already ready. Yes. And even the water bottle filled and ready to be picked up. Yes. Thank you. I had a note on that because that gets into this idea of, unfortunately, Riley didn't have any of these things prepared. So their own alarm system going off of their alarm system, like, oh my gosh, where are my things? And it gets into, yes, this is a 12-year-old. So I picked the age to where I think a lot of us would expect Riley to be a bit more in charge of themselves. But in reality, if we really were stepping back and looking at all of these things going on with this young person, again, remembering the internal stuff, their hormones, and are they hungry, trying to figure out all the things they need in that moment. Sometimes yes, teamwork. We talk a lot around independence isn't an actual thing. None of us are. Even in adulthood, none of us are truly independent. We are all interdependent. We rely on friends and colleagues to chat with, to get support from, work together. So it's the same, bringing that down to kids and being okay with that when they're younger too. It's just kindness. And if the kids really said, no, I'm going to go to this tournament. No, I want to go to Nan's house. I want to do it all today because they really want to. So then that's the idea of like, right, those are the set priorities. So what other little demands can I help with in order to help meet that? And that's in those little things, like you're saying, could be someone else doing the football kit. Yeah, you're 12, but you know what? I'm just going to get it ready for you. And then that's just like such an act of kindness. Maybe next week when there's not so much on, it'd be like, oh, do you mind getting your own stuff ready this weekend? Right. So again, like what our expectations are for independent skills for young people, I think also need to be very flexible, and also in what we're deciding to prioritize, because we can't be completely independent and trying to meet all these expectations all at the same time. That in itself is also some more demands, just more demands. Thank you for that.
Yeah, I like the teamwork from Amanda. That's what we used to do with our teenagers as well. And sometimes I kind of felt I should let them to do it. But I think at the end, it was a good thing that when they felt overwhelmed, I was there to help them out rather than just, kind of having a go at them that they're not capable of doing things by themselves. And it worked out for us.
Yeah. And I think it's a really valuable skill.
Yeah.
Of learning that
I need to help
other people. You can ask other people for help.
Yeah.
Because how many of us in adulthood, I just had it said to me yesterday, like, you're terrible at accepting help.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, you're right. Yeah. I think that is actually a much more valuable skill that, oh, this person cares about me.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just that safety, like we were talking about before the recording, it's that sense of safety, isn't it? And maybe I can do it the next time, but maybe today was just too much, and that's okay. The next comment was about involve them in the decision-making so they feel genuinely involved. Yes, because I imagine this Sunday roast dinner, especially in this part, is just like an ongoing family thing, that it's just no one even talks about it, that they just all go, right? It's just an expectation. They just all know they're going. But just because that's been what's happening doesn't mean that's what we're going to need to continue doing. So let's take a moment and pause and say, maybe they want to skip it. Our kids don't always want to do the same stuff as us, and that's okay. Or maybe if this is a family, maybe just a couple of them go and a couple stay home to have a bit of rest, and then you trade. That's something that families can struggle with when they feel like they're going to be judged for that from other family members, like they're disappointed they're not all at the same things at the same time. But again, it's just getting into that idea of this is what's working for us today. The priority was this, the priority was this. And therefore that means we're here and we want to enjoy ourselves because the other people needed to do whatever it was. And that's all right. I think that's really common with our neurodivergent families because we're trying to meet sometimes some really big clashing needs with kids. So you do see more of us kind of splintering at times. And to us, that just has become a bit more the normal of you want to make sure one seems like they really need to get out and running and doing this. And the other one, you're like, ooh, they really need some like deep Nintendo time. You can tell, so you separate a little bit to give each of them what their version of rest is. And then we can meet up a bit later. Yes. Autonomy. Yes. As a PDA. Yes. Involving me, collaboration, teamwork. Those are all the words that we say constantly with PDAers. Is like this setup that I see on my page gives me so much anxiety. There's so much of what is happening. How come I haven't been asked along the way? Because we get into autonomy means, and you're right on the nose with it, is that autonomy does not equate to independence. Autonomy means were my thoughts included, Were my thoughts valued? Even if we couldn't do what that was right now, was it valued? Was it taken into consideration? Am I part of what's going on versus me being just like slotted through or expected to follow commands without questioning them? So that is what we talk about a lot with PDA autistics. But I always go back to, I think it's relevant for all of us. I don't think any of us like to be just kind of bossed around and slotted around, really. I think we all like to say, like, I would enjoy that, want to do that. I do not really like that. I'm going to just meet you later. Let's see. In the morning, children needs more time to wake up. Yes. Oh my gosh. What fast commands and demands to wake up that quickly and out the door. But it just sure sounds like what a lot of people do, trying to get that little bit more sleep, which really, I mean, if we had a lot more time, like going into sleep, and this age group tends to shift a bit more into delayed sleep. So they probably went to bed quite late. So they're probably pushing that alarm system to be right before they wake up. But that could be part of then, if we went into a different scenario of, we decided actually that sleep, if you're needing to sleep in that late and that close to the football matches, maybe for a little while, we need to prioritize that. And maybe we cut down on how much we're doing sport. Those are the ones that the kids are like, no, but so we try to look at everything else, like how we have been. Let's look at the other demands we can get out of there. And let's see, Caitlin coming in with equal right communication forms, organizing, balancing, too much or not as much as possible. Yes, it is about balance, isn't it? Because we do want to be out there and doing things. It's about that balance. And for everyone, it's really different. And even day to day, it can be really different, can't it? We just might not feel very good. We might have a cold coming on. Who knows? And hence, like, look, our low demand approaches around, again, that idea of, let's be thinking of priorities. Like, even though we might have said yes to these things earlier in the week, we might get into the day and realize, I can't do this. And really becoming okay and trying to drop shame. I'm still very much working on this process of saying, I know I said we were going to meet you guys there. I'm not feeling so great. I actually need to skip it today, and prioritizing my health and maybe somehow spending time with my kids in a different way. So again, like constant relooking at priorities to get that balance. So thank you for that. All right, looking at time. Let me just go to my next slide as kind of like our concluding remarks. I think you can probably see that even in what are fairly simple scenarios, there's a lot happening when we bring in, especially like the internal stuff, and really understand that our emotions create quite a lot of demand on us as well. So there's a lot going on under the surface for young people in particular, because they, like we said, they don't really have the language to be talking about these things as easily. They haven't learned some of these skills on how to advocate for themselves. And they simply don't have the processing skills that we do as an adult to get all of these demands met. So we already did quite a lot on that decision making. You guys did it in as we went along about adding in supports in order to reduce demands. One of the take-home messages is in this graphic on the left. This is, again, where I really sit for work. One of the takeaways I would like you to understand, like advocacy points, is if there's all these demands going on, again, everything is limited. So my energy is limited. My processing is limited. My time is limited. My caring, my motivation is limited. All of it's really limited. And what really happens a lot, not just with neurodivergent people, but if there's a lot going on from the outside demands, we tend to really struggle to recognize what's going on with us, with our emotions and our bodies. That's where you hear everyone like, I forgot to eat today. I haven't drank any water today. We like put off going to the toilet for hours. And obviously everyone can do this to different kinds of extremes. So one big take home message, if you have someone you care for, or for yourself, and you realize that this person has a hard time with toileting, with sleep, with eating, with the emotional regulation stuff, if that's going to be priority, in order to hear those, in order to process and accept them, because hearing it and accepting its different stages, we're going to get a signal. We have to decide if we're going to ignore it or not. and we have to decide what to do about it. So again, like even the one, because I do a lot in eating, is like, you're hungry. And it's like, oh, fine, I'll listen to you. And then now I got to go get something to eat, right? So I have to stop what I'm doing and go handle that. In order to do all that, I really need some of the other outside demands to shut down. If I'm overscheduled, I'm just simply not going to have anything left to take care of myself. It's like the key of when we talk about like helping people with sleeping and eating and toileting. So I could harp on that for hours and hours and hours. It's a huge piece of what I do, and just trying to explain to people, if someone's having a hard time, let's look at everything actually outside the kid first, because when we do that, we'll be able to suss out what actually is there at the time. Because what we might be seeing is the result of just too many demands. And when we reduce the demands, we can actually see, actually, this is what's going on with this kid. And it's just like dropped so much confusion. Any questions about that point? Or
No, I think this
else?
is so important, the internal demands, being aware of them, isn't it? Because sometimes we just kind of have a long list of things to do, and we just push. And we kind of, if we don't do it, we feel bad, and we stop listening to our body and listening ourselves. I actually recently got a new watch that tell me body stress. And it's kind of works on how you breathe and the little differences within. I don't know how it works anyway, but it's amazing when I start to be a little bit of cranky and I check my stress level, I can see that it's actually really high, and it might be nothing happening, but it's just I've done so many things during a day and didn't take that time off. So the watch tells me that I need to take
a break.
time out, which is a shame, because it should be our kind of something that we recognize in ourselves. But
yes,
because of all these demands, external demands, we tend to kind of push it away and just push ourselves. And
yes,
the kids got it even more harder, because then they don't have that autonomy. They just have those demands, whereas we can say no. They very often don't have that language or way to say no. They just kind of keep up with it, and then there is a issue with the behavior or other things, anxiety and stuff. So yeah, that was really good, Laura. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I hope it makes everyone who attended kind of stop and think.
Yes, and about yourself as well. The whole idea too is like it's about yourself as well. And one last point, because you kind of brought that up, but that idea of, I think in our generation, in the adults, that we have that idea of like, I can't meet my internal needs until I've met this list. I'll go to the bathroom as soon as I finish this, but then you get a message from so-and-so, and you're just trying to keep up with all those demands, and you really do shut down what you feel. And then people expect, like, how are you managing your emotions when you shut down listening to your body for so many hours, and then we get cranky, like you're saying, and you're just like, it just spirals itself, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So I hope it's a little bit for you as well. It's something I'm really working on for myself. Really.
Me too, yeah.
I really am. It's definitely helped me a lot, and it helps me as a parent to be constantly thinking, okay, we thought we were going to do this class, but this is just too many demands when we are actually living this day. And I feel totally fine saying to this person, it's just too much. It's us. It's not a you thing. This is too much for us.
And it's a great modeling for children as well, isn't it? When we say, this is too much for me, I can't take more, I need to take a rest. Children learn that, those boundaries, that, that perhaps they will take it to their adulthood, that they will be able to do the boundaries.
That's the hope, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because we normalize boundaries.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for everyone coming in, especially on like a Friday. So this is so great. So thank you so much. I hope you found it interesting. It's something that I find fascinating, like we were saying. So, and then I'm around if you have more follow-up questions on it. But I hope it kind of helps shine a light on some stuff for the kiddos and for yourself.
Definitely. Definitely for me, definitely for everyone. Lots of thank you messages for you. So thank you everyone for coming tonight. Have a good evening, and let's keep in touch. You can follow Laura on all those social medias if you want to find out more about her work. And I'm looking forward to see you on our other expert seminars. You take care, guys. Thank you. Thank you,
Bye,
Laura.
everyone. Thanks so
Bye-bye.
much.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you for watching our video. For more London School of Childcare Studies content, see our social media or visit our website childcarestudies.co.uk.